Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review an album from a band you might have heard of. They're Icelandic. They do post-rock with parentheses, literally. Sigur Ros, and again, we suck at pronouncing everything.
It's a stressful part of what
Kveiker. Every track title on this album, we decided this is, their seventh studio album. So we've struggled through last year. Volturi came out, and we struggled through pronouncing that and all the track titles. And this one, it's even worse because they all seem like dinosaur Pokemon.
Yeah.
And so we will continue to slaughter every name of every track on this album. So apologies ahead of time for that. Now, Tom, what about Kveiker? I mean, this is kind of a change in sound for the band. Slightly. You still get I feel like you still get the Sigur Ros you know and love.
You do.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah, and it's a little bit mixed up with some other kinds of sounds. I mean, this album, to me, is just ballsier than about anything I've ever heard from them.
Right.
And right from the get-go, right with the first track, I mean, there's just this big, like, kind of synth-based sound, but you still have Jónsi's just gorgeous vocals on top of it. I mean, and that part of it just sounds perfect, and it always has. So really, it's kind of what's going on in the background. You get a lot of cool auxiliary percussion sounds, kind of clanging, like metallic sounds.
Yes.
Everything sounds very real.
Tons of auxiliary percussion.
Oh yeah, tons of it, and it really helps the songs move along. And comparing that from Volturi, I feel like we really just got the two opposite ends of the spectrum of what this band is capable of. Because Volturi was so much more ambient and meandered a bit with sound, and really, there were some intense parts, but the intensity came from just this thick, united wall of sound rather than really complex instrumentation.
For sure.
Whereas here, they really achieved that through the complex instrumentation.
Yes, and one other thing about Kveiker that I noticed was that it definitely focused on the beats more.
Yeah, definitely.
There are a number of tracks on this album that were very much centered around this just gigantic beat. And, not saying that they incorporated dubstep. This is obviously a derivation or iteration of a dubstep beat. But one thing that the dubstep movement that took over music almost to just a fault. I'm so sick of it. But it does have some positive reflections on other bands doing this. Glassjaw use similar beats as Sigur Ros is using in Kveiker. And so what you have is you have these really thick, just huge beats that just shake the house, right? But then they work against that almost. They almost contrast against this with these really high-pitched melodies, whether it's bells or high-pitched guitar, electronic melodies that they're using. And it provides this really stark, chiaroscuro contrast.
Yeah, but it's all about the balance of those elements, and they achieve that perfectly because, you mentioned dubstep and really
industrial almost.
Yeah, the thing about dubstep is usually when that bass comes in, it's the focus, and you have some sort of sidechain compressor to just cut everything else out when that comes in.
They're not quite doing that.
No, they're not. They're using it to reinforce and support the sounds that they're using elsewhere, and so it still lets them feel like a full band.
For sure. The other thing I noticed about this album is that about 2/3 of the tracks on this album, there's only 9, so let's say 6 of the tracks on this album are these really big, moody, dark pieces. Then there's the other, 3 songs are really kind of more upbeat, kind of bright songs, like something you would see off of Jónsi's solo album from a couple years ago. Like track 3, Isjaki. That song definitely.
They wrote that about you.
They must have. Isjaki. God. I'm done. You totally threw me off. So that track definitely had a very bright melody that I just got behind because it was emotive at the same time. It was optimistic. It was just and it had great contrast between the track before it, which I won't try to pronounce.
And it's perfect album placement because those, like you said, those first couple tracks and then going into it. I mean, they keep pulling you in for something different. It keeps you engaged.
Right. Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to just kind of critique this band on is that they generally don't stray from their formula too much. Track 4, Euphoria, or however that is actually pronounced, that song broke the formula a little bit. It's shorter, more just kind of ambient sounding, built kind of towards the end. I just didn't feel like it really accomplished that much. It just seemed kind of like this messy idea right in the middle of the album. Right when the album was getting really, really good, like masterful level, then they have to change it, and it just didn't fit. And then they go back to the old model. I just didn't feel like that song fit. It was kind of a hiccup in the flow for me. But then later on, you have all these other moody tracks, and I don't feel like they reinvented the track enough to really make it stand out. Like, I feel like if you were to take all of the darker, moodier tracks and put them right next to each other, you could make a Venn diagram, and the Venn diagrams are almost like completely over one another. That always sends warning signs to me, whether it's a post-rock outfit or indie rock or metal. And like, whenever you're doing the same ideas over and over again, you generally, it wears on the listen. So that's something that did kind of bring this album down a little bit for me. But in the grand scheme of things, the instrumentation on this album is just so top-notch.
Yeah, masterful.
So top-notch. I mean, in the production too. That's one thing I've always been, really respectful since, this band's early days. When they rose to prominence, in popular prominence, like with the, they got associated with Radiohead somehow, and I think that has to be due to, some of the production that they have, some of like how clean how they're able to rock out on guitar and still have it sound like really accessible and clean. So.
And some of the atmospheric elements and the falsetto vocals,
for sure,
how those work in there as well.
Yeah, I thought Jonsi did an excellent job on this album. I felt like a lot of the vocals were just, some of the best I've heard on a Sigur Ros album.
Yeah.
Tom, what are you thinking about giving this one?
I'm going to give this an 81.
Cool.
I liked it.
Cool.
Wow.
So I think we're switching spots from the easiest.
Yeah, we are.
I'm going to go 82 on this one.
Right.
I felt like this was a strong album. I liked it better than Valtari. Sigur Ros, in the research I've done on the band and what other music reviewers think, it's pretty consistent. Like, Sigur Ros just pumps out really decent albums. There's not a lot of elasticity in the albums that they put out or variants. And that's something I think is just a tribute and a testament to this band, that they're just always looking to put out good music. They're good songwriters. They know what they're doing. They know how to write good post-rock. The only thing I would want to see in the future is them to be a little bit more experimental within the album. They change, if you present an idea once or twice or three times, don't be afraid to stray from that idea in the further. So that's something I
think
definitely
they can mix
want to
it up
see.
a bit more. I agree.
Yeah. What did you guys think about Kveiker, or however you pronounce it? If you know how to pronounce these track titles or the album title, please, we're always in for a lesson. We know we're from Iowa, have that Midwest accent. We don't pronounce things very well, so some of you more civilized folk can please give us a lesson. We would appreciate it. And also, leave us a comment about the album as well. www.velocitiesmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesmusic. As well, please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That's where we get to talk with you guys every day about the albums you're into, and we love hearing from you guys. You're the heart and soul of VIMTV, and this is why we do what we do. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.